Lily, a newlywed, anxiously awaited her husband Nick's return from work. Excited, she met him in the cozy living room and announced, "Nick, I have amazing news for you. Soon there won't just be two of us living in this house, but three." Nick's eyes widened and a smirk appeared on his face. He hugged Lily warmly and said, "That's the best news ever, dear. My heart is overflowing with joy." With a mischievous twinkle in her eyes, Lily playfully replied, "I'm so glad you think so, because my mom is coming to live with us starting tomorrow morning." Three pregnant women, Sarah, Emily, and a blonde woman named Lucy, were waiting in the hospital for a prenatal checkup. They began discussing the possible sex of the baby based on old wives' tales they had heard. Sarah confidently declared, "I think I'm having a boy. They say that if you are on the bottom during an intimate act, it's a boy." Emily smirked and replied, "Well, in that case, I'm probably having a girl because I was on top." Lucy, the blonde, looked puzzled for a moment and then exclaimed, eyes wide, "Oh my God, I can't wait to see my puppies. A boy! Oh, a boy!" At a military base, the colonel gathered his team early in the morning for a briefing. While everyone was waiting for the coffee to brew, the colonel, looking a little tired, decided to share a light-hearted question. He explained, "You know, my wife was in quite a playful mood last night, so I didn't get as much sleep as usual." He then asked, "In your opinion, how much of intimacy is work and how much is pleasure?" The major, a seasoned officer, thought for a second and said, "Sir, I'd say it's 25% work and 75% pleasure." The captain, with more experience than a junior, but less than a major, pondered and answered, "For me, it feels like 50% work and 50% pleasure." The young lieutenant, fresh and optimistic, grinned and said, "Well, I think it's 25% work and 75% pleasure, but that might change depending on how many drinks I've had." The colonel, amused by the range of answers, noticed the private first class, PFC, the lowest rank in the room, preparing the coffee. Curious, he asked, "What about you? What's your take?" The PFC, without missing a beat, confidently replied, "Sir, I believe it's got to be 100% pleasure. If there was any work involved, the officers would have me doing it for them." The room went quiet, and the colonel, raising an eyebrow, asked, "Oh, and why is that?" The PFC responded, "Well, sir, if there was any work involved, the officers would have me doing it for them." George had always struggled with his weight, attempting various diets like the Mediterranean diet, Atkins, and even unconventional ones found online, with no success. Despite his friends' suggestions and frequenting fitness forums, George was on the verge of giving up. One lazy Sunday afternoon, while perusing the local newspaper, he stumbled upon a tiny ad that caught his attention. It simply stated, "Lose weight efficiently, only $5 a pound." Skeptical yet curious, George thought, why not? And decided to give it a try. He picked up the phone, and on the other end, a soft, almost mysterious voice asked, "How many pounds are you looking to lose?" George hesitantly replied with 10. The voice calmly instructed him to provide his credit card details, and someone would be sent over the next morning to assist him. The following day, after breakfast, there was a knock on George's door. He was greeted by a stunning brunette wearing nothing but running shoes and a sign that read, "If you can catch me, I'm yours for hours." George ran around his house, garden, over furniture, and even around the block. Out of breath and almost collapsing, he managed to tag her. The brunette then instructed him to check his weight, and to George's astonishment, he had indeed lost 10 pounds. Encouraged by this unique and effective method, George called the number again in the evening. The same mysterious voice answered, and this time George, feeling ambitious, declared, "I'm aiming for 20 pounds. The next morning, an athletic blonde with the same sign awaited George. This chase was even more intense, pushing him to his physical limits. By the end, he was exhausted but delighted to find he had lost another 20 pounds. Thrilled by the success of this unconventional weight loss method, George decided to aim even higher. He called the number again and boldly declared, "This time I want to lose 50 pounds." The voice paused for a moment before replying, "50 pounds is quite a challenge, but all right. Prepare yourself for tomorrow." Eager and anxious, George went to bed early that night. As dawn broke, he was already up, mentally and physically preparing for the day's challenge. When the doorbell finally rang, George rushed to open it. However, instead of a person, he was met with a massive gorilla holding a sign that read, "If I catch you, you're mine. If I catch you." A large number of viewers watch my videos without a subscription. Therefore, subscribe to my channel so as not to miss new videos with funny jokes. On a Monday morning, a man enters his office cubicle and decides to begin his day by checking emails. To his surprise, he finds a message from his next-door neighbor that reads, "Hey, do you have any photos of your wife without her clothes on?" Feeling angered and taken aback, the man quickly responds with, "No, I do not." A few moments later, another notification pops up on his screen. It's another email from his neighbor. Thinking it might be an apology, he clicks on it only to find the message saying, "Want to buy some?" On a plane from Ireland, a young lady turned to the elderly priest seated next to her and politely asked, "Sir, can I ask you a favor?" The priest smiled and responded, "Of course, my dear. How may I assist you?" Nervously, she explained, "I bought an expensive hairdryer for my mom's birthday, and it's still in its box. I'm concerned it might exceed the allowed amount for customs, and they might confiscate it. Could you hide it for me, perhaps under your clothes?" After a moment's thought, the priest replied, "I'd be happy to help, but I cannot tell a lie." She smiled, saying, "You look so trustworthy. I don't think they'll question you." When they reached customs, she let the priest go ahead of her. The customs officer asked, "Sir, do you have anything to declare?" The priest, with a serious expression, responded, "From the top of my head to my waist, there's nothing special to mention." Finding the answer unusual, the customs officer probed further, asking, "All right then, what about from your waist down to your feet?" Thinking quickly, the priest replied, "Down there I have a wonderful tool meant for a lady, but it's never been used before." The customs officer grinned and waved the priest through. There once was a prosperous Texan farmer who, out of curiosity, delved into his family history. To his surprise, he traced his roots back to a charming Irish town where his ancestors were also farmers. Fueled by this discovery, the Texan embarked on a journey to Ireland with the hope of connecting with distant relatives. After a lengthy flight and a drive from Dublin, the Texan, feeling a bit hungry and seeking local guidance, decided to stop at a welcoming pub for a pint and some information. Inside, he noticed a friendly Irishman at the bar, and as he sipped his frothy pint, he shared his story of ancestral exploration and the purpose of his visit to Ireland. The Irishman, looking intrigued, responded, "You don't say! While I can't claim to know your family, it's quite a coincidence because I'm a farmer myself. What's farming like out there in Texas?" Eager to share, the Texan farmer replied, "Oh, I'd love to tell you. Farming in Texas has been incredibly rewarding. If you started driving west from my farmhouse in the morning, you could drive steadily all day and still wouldn't reach the end of my property. The same goes for driving east, north, or south. You could spend the whole day in any direction and still not reach the end of my land." The Irish farmer nodded in understanding and humorously remarked, "I get it completely. I've got a tractor like that as well." 3 soldiers, recently returned from their duties in the Falkland Islands, stood at attention in the musty, oak-lined office of their commanding officer. These men, hailing from different units, were recognized for their bravery and exceptional service during the conflict. The first, a seasoned Special Forces commando adorned with scars mapping his tours, was called forward. The commander presented him with a proposition. "For your outstanding service, we're offering compensation of $100 for every inch on your body from one chosen point to another." Eagerly, the commando snapped to attention and declared, "Sir, measure from the top of my head to the tips of my toes." The commander used a tailor's tape, and the verdict was 70 inches, earning the commando $7,000. Next in line was a confident Marine who stepped up with arms spread wide. He requested, "Sir, measure from the fingertip of my left hand to the fingertip of my right hand, both arms outstretched." The commander, surprised but obliging, stretched the tape, and the Marine's quick thinking earned him $7,500 with a measurement of 75 inches. Finally, the third soldier, an explosives expert, stepped forward and said, "Sir, I'd like to be measured from the tip of my private to the end of my testicles." A moment of silence enveloped the room, and the two other soldiers exchanged glances as the commander raised an eyebrow. Resignedly, he knelt to fulfill the request, but upon standing up, he exclaimed, "Good heavens, man, where are your testicles?" The explosives expert smiled and replied, "Back in the Falkland Islands, sir."